Movies, generally, have a positive influence on people. Sometimes, however, they can inspire dangerous or even criminal acts, and that's what we're looking at today. Now, it's not the fault of the movies that these things happened, but it does add a chilling or tragic element to the story of a film's impact, and a stark reminder of the power popular films have in our lives. I'm Will for What Culture, and here are 10 people who copied movies in disturbing ways. 10. Wedding Crashers inspired a woman to poison her fiancé. A raucous comedy like Wedding Crashers isn't exactly the kind of movie you'd think would inspire an attempted murder, and yet that's exactly what happened in a 2019 incident. In June of that year, a North Carolina woman was arrested after spiking her fiancé's soda with eye drops, all in an effort to gain custody of their daughter. The woman told the authorities that she got the idea directly from Wedding Crashers, which contains a scene where Owen Wilson's character pulls off a similar stunt. The movie obviously plays this sequence for laughs, with the victim merely falling ill, but in reality, the consequences would have been far more severe, even fatal, if the woman's fiancé had actually downed the deadly concoction. Luckily though, he caught her in the act and immediately dialed 911 after locking himself and his daughter in a bathroom. 9. A trio of bank robbers modeled their crimes on The Town's central crooks. Ben Affleck's 2010 crime epic The Town is one of the smartest thrillers of modern times, and in fact, its bank heist sequences are so engaging that a trio of thugs was actually inspired to copy them in real life. The three young men devised a plan to rob a check-cashing store in Queens, taking inspiration from the Hollywood hit while mapping out their scheme. They committed the crime by hiding their faces under expensive white masks, which cost around $1,000 each, which reportedly were not too dissimilar to the creepy, somewhat ghostly ones worn by the lawbreakers in Affleck's movie. The men went on a shopping spree after making off with around $200,000, but in a strange twist, it turned out that one of them had actually emailed the mask maker to say thank you, which led to all three of them being caught. 8. A teenager died after copying Into the Wild's lead character. Cult hit Into the Wild follows a disillusioned man who escapes modern society by venturing into the wilderness, where he lives for several months. At first, it seems to be a story about hope, about finding yourself by removing all the hustle and bustle of 20th century life. Unfortunately though, main character Christopher realizes how unforgiving nature can be, and he ultimately dies after eating a poisonous plant. In 2013, the real-life story of an Arizona teenager called Jonathan Kroom also had a tragic ending, after he took inspiration from the film and headed out into the forest. A month later, he was found dead just 1,000 feet from his abandoned car. Kroom's father said he watched Into the Wild a lot and attributed his desire to live in the wilderness to his broken heart, which was caused by the end of a relationship. 7. A man died in a high-speed car crash after watching Too Fast, Too Furious. Back when the Fast and the Furious movies were actually about street racing, there were lots of stories about people attempting to copy the reckless driving seen in the films. One such case revolved around a 17-year-old kid called William Lacasse Jr., who was heading home after watching Too Fast, Too Furious, when a pair of cars flashed their lights at him and challenged him to a street race. William obliged, pushing pedal to metal and reaching a dangerously high speed. Moments later, he slammed into a concrete light pole and died. Because so many cases of unsafe driving were blamed on the Fast and Furious movies around this time, Universal actually came out and commented on the matter, stating that the link between real-life accidents and fictional movies was unjustifiable. Ultimately, this is the truth, and a film is not responsible for causing someone to speed while driving, but it does not take away from the tragedy of William's untimely death. 6. Blue Crush's underwater training scene was fatally imitated by a young boy. Blue Crush is a fairly by-the-numbers sports movie centered on Anne-Marie, a young woman who strives to become a professional surfer. As is the case with the vast majority of sports movies out there, it also features numerous training scenes where Anne-Marie and her friends catch some waves to hone their surfing skills. In one of these scenes, Anne-Marie takes things up a notch by carrying a heavy rock across the ocean floor in an effort to improve her endurance. It's a great moment in the story, but sadly a young boy who attempted to mimic this feat in real life ended up paying with his life. In 2003, 13-year-old Anthony Alfonson tried to copy the scene from Blue Crush, but in a slightly different way. While playing with his friends, he attempted to swim across a 15-foot deep pond with a heavy chain wrapped around his waist, which soon caused him to be dragged underneath the water, where he sadly drowned. Nearby parents and rescue workers did try to save Anthony, but it all happened so fast that they simply could not get there in time. 5. A child fell 19 stories while pretending to be the Amazing Spider-Man 2's titular hero. We've all had those moments in life where we dream about being a superhero. Of course, for children, they can struggle to find the difference between fictional excitement and real danger. In 2014, Valentino was excited about seeing the newly released The Amazing Spider-Man 2 at his local cinema, so he asked his mother to take him. When she refused, Valentino ran inside his 19th floor bedroom and locked the door. And shortly after, his mother was told that a body had been found on the street below. Valentino was rushed to the hospital, but he was pronounced dead on arrival. The predominant speculation by police was that the boy fell while trying to imitate the wall-crawling superhero he was desperate to see. Reportedly, Valentino enjoyed role-playing as characters like Iron Man and Captain America whenever he saw those movies. And like a lot of youngsters, he was also a huge fan of Spidey. 4. The Deer Hunter's Russian roulette scenes led to a double suicide. The Russian roulette scenes in 1978's The Deer Hunter are easily the most famous moments in the movie, with Robert De Niro and Christopher Walken acting their hearts out, leading the film to a Best Picture win at the Academy Awards. Unfortunately, however, the film's legacy hasn't been entirely positive. A couple of years after its release, it was reported that over 24 people had died while mimicking the Russian roulette scenes peppered throughout the story, prompting for calls for these moments to be edited out of the film's TV reruns. One of the most widely reported incidents that led to these censorship calls involved 2 men in their late 20s who shot themselves in the head while sat at their kitchen table. The men, who had recently watched The Deer Hunter, used partially loaded revolvers to play their deadly game, and while they both survived the first trigger pull, they weren't so lucky on the second. 3. A young boy hanged himself after imitating Captain Jack Sparrow's noose escape. In the closing scenes of 2003's Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl, Captain Jack Sparrow successfully evades death when his hanging is interrupted by blacksmith-turned-sea dog Will Turner. Will uses his sword to support Jack's legs, and the legendary pirate is freed when the hangman accidentally cuts his noose. It's another unlikely escape that's befitting of the famous character, but tragically, the scene was copied by a 12-year-old boy in 2005. After watching the movie with his mother, young Scott Buckle took inspiration from Jack's escape by hanging a noose around his own neck and attempting a similar feat. Tragically, he did not survive. Reportedly, the youngster was prone to imitating the things he saw, with his mother explaining that he felt invincible and was not aware of the risks. Because of this, it was assumed the child genuinely believed he could survive, as was depicted in the film. 2. Money Train's fire attacks were replicated by 2 real-life criminals. 1995's Money Train stars Wesley Snipes and Woody Harrelson as 2 cops attempting to hunt down and apprehend a serial killer known as the Torch. One of the Torch's horrible methods is to approach a subway token booth, spray some gasoline inside, and threaten to set the attendant on fire unless they hand over the cash. We see the Torch do this a couple of times throughout the story, and these scenes inspired a pair of real-life criminals to enact a similar plot not too long after the movie's release. In November of '95, 2 men took some flammable liquid and a match and set a subway token booth ablaze, with the attendant trapped inside. This attendant, 50-year-old Harry Kaufman, suffered 2nd and 3rd degree burns over most of his body and died of his injuries 2 weeks later. Understandably, the authorities identified the inspiration for this from the sequences in Money Train, due to the fact that the movie was playing in cinemas at the time. There were also a couple of similar token booth attacks surrounding the movie's release, but thankfully, none of these resulted in any more deaths. 1. A man drank his girlfriend's blood after watching Interview with the Vampire. On the 17th of November, 1994, Daniel Sterling took his girlfriend Lisa to see the Tom Cruise starring Interview with the Vampire, a film in which the titular creatures drink plenty of human and animal blood, a necessity for them to survive. The next morning, Lisa woke up to find Sterling in bed, staring at her. She asked him what was wrong, and he replied, "I'm going to kill you and drink your blood." It sounds like a ludicrous threat, but it wasn't a joke. The very next evening, Sterling stabbed his partner 7 times in the chest and back before consuming her blood for several minutes. Incredibly though, Lisa survived, while Sterling was locked up in jail on an attempted murder charge. Strangely, Sterling, who claimed to believe in vampires, stated he did not blame the film for his actions, perhaps indicating that his desire to feast on blood actually predated the movie. And there you have 10 people who copied movies in disturbing and often tragic ways. Please remember to like this video and subscribe, and I'll see you next time with some hopefully more cheerful movie trivia.